Greetings and welcome to the third episode of Mysteries of Haitian Voodoo. I am your co-host Natara Rose, and I am joined by your host Papa Mystique. We want to give gratitude and thanks to everyone for joining us and listening as we talk about Bwa Kay Iman. We will be joined by Houngan Samba'L from La Cruz, Sicile in Haiti, who will be sharing his knowledge on this history.
Thank you, Natara Rose, for that introduction. And I too would like to welcome everybody to our third episode of Mysteries of Haitian Voodoo. As mentioned, we do have a very special presentation for you all today, as we will be going over a significant part of Haiti's history, Bwa Kayiman. If you don't know what Bwa Kayiman is, Bwa Kayiman was an event many call a ceremony, a voodoo ceremony, where they came together, the slaves, the Maroons, and others who were interested in coming up with a solution to the slavery that was happening in Saint-Domingue, which is present-day Haiti. And so we'll be talking with Houngan Samba'L on how he was taught the history, and so that we can get the facts from him about what happened at Bwa Kayiman. Because Bwa Kayiman is shrouded in oral history. And so you may hear one version from this person, you may hear a different version from another person. But what we wanted to do was talk to someone who has over 30 years of experience in practicing voodoo so that we can get the story from him. And I'm talking about Houngan Samba'L. And so he'll be providing us with insight and context to Bwa Kayiman and giving us the details. And I'm looking forward to it because, I always wondered why this significant part of history was always told in a different way. Were there secrets to Bwa Kayiman that we didn't hear about? And why are there so many different versions or stories about what happened at Bwa Kayiman? And he speaks to this as he breaks down the story of Bwa Kayiman for us. So without further ado, I am going to start the interview that we had with Samba'L on Bwa Kayiman. And of course, my first question to Houngan Samba'L was, what is Bwa Kayiman? And here was his response.
Très bien. Histoire Bwa Kayiman. Bwa Kayiman ou bien Bwa Kay Iman. Gen moun ki di Bwa Kayiman, gen moun ki di Bwa Kayiman, gen moun ki di Bwa Kay Mambo Iman. Mambo Iman, c'est lui-même qui monte mythologie vaudoua, qui fait vaudoua commencer par A, B, C, D et F dans le règlement chanté. Alors, les seyoun nan moun après cérémonie qui monte, ça relè Panthéon chanté vaudoua, règlement vaudoua, règlement académie du vaudou. Et qu'on y a Boukman, lui-même était un musulman. Par rapport à que Boukman était un musulman, moun no pou yo l'Europe de Bwa Kayiman, c'est parce que Boukman te gen livre Coran en baboual. Mais qu'on y est là, on a cherché qu'on est qui ça Bwa Kayiman. On a bien dit Bwa Kayiman. C'est-à-dire dans la langue King Congo, vous parlez au Congo, ou bien dans la langue Fombe, là vous parlez de Bwa Kayiman, vous voulez dire Kayimitié, Pierre Kayimite. Comme dans l'année 1773, te gen yon colon qui les Normands les Médicis, et Normands les Médicis lui-même il est allé au Mexique avec Cuba, il a acheté un pile citronnier avec Kayimitié, il vient tenter dans la zone ça que nous les Monts Rouges là, ou bien zone ça qui porte nom Bwa Kayiman. Et les plantes vont venir grandir, vont venir dans une forêt, et en dans la forêt, par exemple, on trouve vide là-dedans. Et nèg ça qui est normalement les médias, il te gagne toute une série de chiens méchants si esclaves ont passé dans zone ça qui pour manger. En dépit de tout ça, esclaves yo pas séparage quand même, yo dévié chien yo allé dans zone nan que les Bwa Kayiman, côté yo al fait un congrès vaudou. Alors pas grand pile moun en Haïti consacré un congrès vaudou. Un congrès vaudou c'est là réunit plusieurs habitations, plusieurs lacous, plusieurs démembrés, plusieurs associations, plusieurs regroupements, des sortes faire ça un congrès du vaudou. Alors ça n'a pas répété en pile dans le vaudou parce que c'est pas facile d'entendre le monde dire ils font un congrès vaudou. Ou quand on des phrases ça congrès dans bouche moun la Tibonite par exemple on prend la cour de Ronville ou qu'on gagne congrès dans la cour de Ronville, là on prend la cour Badjo qu'on gagne congrès dans la cour Badjo, là on prend la cour Souvenance qu'on gagne congrès dans la cour Souvenance. Après ça moun n'a pas tellement entendu parler de congrès son gros thème côté tout vaudou réuni, tout vaudou vie ou bien vaudou isan réuni. Quand y a Bwa Kayiman, nous ouais normal les médias lui même qui c'est propriétaire zone ça, lui c'est premier écrivain qui parlait sur ça les cérémonie Bwa Kayiman. Pas oublier que son français et en dans cérémonie Bwa Kayiman, alors moi même pour moi plus gros vaudou isan faire comme c'est en dans cérémonie Bwa Kayiman son congrès, en dans congrès a des protestants, des gens qui étaient catholiques depuis en Afrique, des gens qui étaient musulmans depuis en Afrique, des gens qui étaient bouddhistes. Tout le monde ça a accompagné idéologie macandale. Parce que cérémonie Bwa Kayiman son idéologie macandale et macandale vient mourir, ils mettent une pression psychologique sur la famille, ils coupent tête monsieur, ils prennent avec sous président naïve comme ça pour ne pas jamais parler de révolution encore. Et qu'on est là, ça va venir arriver là, Boukman va venir descendre macandale.
The story of Bwa Kay Iman. There's Bwa Kayiman, Bwa Kay Iman, and Bwa Kay Iman. Mambo Iman is who mounted the mythology of voodoo, who made voodoo start by A, B, C, D, E, F, and the règlement of the songs. However, she is one of the people who, after the ceremony, mounted the pantheon of voodoo songs, Voodoo Règlement Academy of Voodoo. And now, Boukman, he was a Muslim. So part of the reason they say Bwa Kay Iman is because Boukman had a Quran under his arm. But now, let's see what Bwa Kay Iman is. We can very well say Bwa Kay Iman in the language of Kikongo, where they speak in Congo, or the language Fanbe. When they say Bwa Kay Iman, they mean Kay imitir, Pie Kay imit. And so, in 1773, there was a colonizer named Norman Lemedy who went to Mexico and Cuba, and he bought a lot of lemon trees with Kay imiti, and he planted them in the zone we call Mont Rouge, or the name we call Bwa Kay Iman. Now, when the plants became large, they created a forest, and in the forest, there will be an empty hole. This man they called Lemedy, he had some wicked dogs. If the slaves appeared in the zone, then they would eat them. The people met in Bwa Kay Iman anyway. They deviated the dogs away from where they went and had a voodoo congress. A voodoo congress is when you unite several habitations, several lacus, several démembrés, several associations, several regroupements. This does not repeat a lot in voodoo. It's not easy for someone to say they're going to do a voodoo congress. You might hear this phrase from the mouth of people like Thibonite. For example, when you take Lacu de Ronville, you have a congress in de Ronville. Lacu Badjo has a congress. Lacu Souvenance. After this, people do not hear people talking about the congress. It's a big term where all the voodoo unite. All the voodooism unites. Norman Lemedy, he is the first writer to write on the Bwa Kay Iman ceremony. But don't forget, he was a Frenchman. In the Congress, and this is where a lot of voodoos make the mistake, there were Protestants, There were Catholics ever since Africa. There were Muslims ever since Africa. Buddhists. All of them came to meet under the ideology of Makandal. Bwa Kay Iman was the ideology of Makandal. But Makandal died. And to put an impression on the slaves, they cut his head off. So people don't talk about revolution again. So what happens is Boukman is a descendant of Makandal.
That was such an insightful introduction to the story. I have a few questions to further explore the details. So, who were the key figures mentioned that were involved in the ceremony, and what roles did they play?
Well, the first person he mentioned Bwa Iman. So historically, we know her as Cecile Fatiman. And he explained her significant contributions to voodoo when he said that she was who created the règlement of voodoo songs. Interesting enough, his Lakou is called Lakou Cecile. Although it is an acronym, it's also a reference to Bwa Iman. She played a crucial role in organizing the Voodoo Congress, as he called it, and some say it took her 4 years to put this together. Bwa Bwa Iman is also a reference to Cecile Fatiman, Bwa Iman. Another person that he mentioned was Duddy Boukman, who is well known for his role in Bwa Kay Iman. He was the presiding Houngan over Bwa Kay Iman. He was also a Muslim who carried the Quran, the holy book of Islam, under his arm. So when they say Boukman, it is believed because he carried a book, they called him Boukman. Because in those days, you weren't allowed to have a book. But also, an imam is an Islamic priest. So Bwa Kay Iman could also be interpreted as a reference to Duddy Boukman. He also mentioned Norman Lemedi. Now, Lemedi was a French man who owned the property at Bwa Kay Iman. He explained that the reason Bwa Kay Iman was a forest was because this French man planted lemon trees and a plant called Kay Imichi all over his property, creating a thick forest with an empty hole in the middle, which is where the Voodoo Congress met. This property was secured by vicious dogs that would attack the slaves, so the slaves had to be extremely careful. He also mentioned that Norman Lemedi was the first to write of Bwa Kay Iman, which could be significant later because of the subsequent lies and contradictions to this history. Finally, he mentioned Makandal, who was not physically there at Bwa Kay Iman, but it was his idea. He is the one that sparked the need to unite everyone. Although he was executed publicly and his head put on display to frighten the slaves from ever wanting to revolt, it did not work. And Boukman would be the man with the spirit of Makandal to preside over the event. I have a section in my book, Mysteries of Haitian Voodoo, which I'll be putting out soon, where I talk about Makandal, who he was, and his impact. Samba'L also says that many people make the mistake of thinking it was just voodooism there. He said there were people of all religions there, signifying that a voodoo congress is not easy to do. In fact, he says that not many people can call a voodoo congress. Only those with the capacity to do so can, and he mentioned a few Lakous that could do it, such as Lakou Bajo, Lakou Souvenance, Lakou de Ronville, places like that. So those were the initial people that he mentioned that played a role in Bwa Kay Iman, but of course there are more that he's going to talk about later.
I'd love to dive deeper into some aspects of this story, but let's hear more from Samba'L.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's let Samba'L continue with the story.
Ça va venir arriver là, Boukman va venir descendre Makandal. Boukman lui-même avec un lemba, c'est dans lemba, c'est là nous va venir une loi que les Zaou lemba. Et Lemba lui-même, c'est lui-même qui gourmet pour libérer la République dominicaine. Sur la République dominicaine, on va voir El Museo de Lemba, le musée de Lemba. Et en Haïti, on va voir aucun musée de Boukman. On va voir aucun musée de Boukman. Comme c'est Boukman avec Lemba qui mène le tambour pétro en Haïti, c'est eux qui mènent des tambours en Haïti, qui viennent avec Richel Pétro. Cérémonie Bwa Kay Iman, gen Marinette Boischèche qui te servi la donne. Qui est Marinette Boischèche? Eh bien, c'est Marguerite Dédé, qui te gen sel qui te mouri, frère qui te mouri, et puis qu'on y a eu même, je dis, tête une partie, je dis, moun tête pas douette. Et les Dessalines te mouri, c'est les mêmes qui ont ramassé morceau de Dessalines pour la porter le bail de Saint-Anne dans le sac, pour aller insérer sur place de Saint-Anne. Cérémonie Bwa Kayiman, pour moi-même, c'est un pacte socio-culturel pour abolir l'esclavage partout dans le monde. Mais ça, cérémonie Bwa Kayiman. Un pacte socio-culturel politique pour abolir l'esclavage dans tout pays dans le monde qui est esclave. Cérémonie Bwa Kayiman a naissance avec les Nations Unies, il a naissance avec l'OEA, il a naissance avec toute l'autre organisation qui défend les droits de l'homme dans le monde. Et c'est cette cérémonie Bwa Kayiman qui baille. Elle a des cérémonies Bwa Kayiman lui-même. Son pacte qui signe pour pas jamais gagner encore l'esclave dans le monde là. Dans le monde là, pas Haïti. C'est dans le monde là. C'est-à-dire Bwa Kayiman lui-même, ça que fait dire Bwa Kayiman, c'est parce que son pile pied bois, normalement les médecins à l'acheter, qui te les citronniers, ça veut dire pied citron, avec Kayimitier, qui veut dire Kayimite. Et c'est eux même ça yo. Eh bien, population arrivée venir une forêt ça, il y a la donné les une forêt grandir, c'est là que on joindre au goût, au terrain au goût monter moun yo, tout monde monter yo, tout doit monter yo. En dans cérémonie ça, par gain on parle un sacrifice. Alors ce sacrifice ça, yo pas bail porter non cochon marron. Cochon marron veut dire qui ça à l'époque 1794, 1791, l'ordre du cochon marron, ça veut dire esclave. L'ordre du cochon marron, c'est esclave marron comme cochon. C'est comme ça qu'on a traité esclave, et on chante pour eux. Ils disent, cochon marron, moi ba manger, ba manger. Moi ba ou de l'eau, ba boire de l'eau. C'est fait nan boire à manger. C'est fait nan boire à manger. Fait nan boire à manger. C'est-à-dire, là, on va esclave, on mange sans goût, sans sel là. Et laisse pas venir une tradition piment, il va piler un piment mettre là pour manger pour pas vomir. Et bien qu'on est là, il considéré comme cochon marron. Et c'est non esclave que les cochons marron. Alors dans la cérémonie, il va touyer un cochon marron. Cochon marron par porter nom yon vaudouisant qui relait Tijan Vixama.
So what happens next is Boukman becomes a descendant of Makandal. Boukman and Lemba, for whom they have a law called Zao Lemba, Lemba fought for the Dominicans' independence. In the Dominican Republic, they have a Museo de Lemba. But in Haiti, they don't have a Museo de Boukman. Boukman and Lemba are who brought the petro right to Haiti. Marinette Boischèche also served in Bwa Kayiman. Who was she? She was Marguerite Dédé, who had her sister die, and her brother died, and she lost her mind. So when Dessalines died, she said she was taking his remains to Satan in a little sack. And so she took it, and she hid it on a plate for Satan. Bwa Kay Iman was a social, cultural, political pact to abolish slavery in every country in the world where there was slavery. Bwa Kay Iman gave birth to Nasozini, L'Oreal, and all other organizations that defend people's rights in the world. It was a pact that was signed to never have slavery in the world, not just Haiti, but the world. It's called Bwa Kayiman because there were a lot of trees. Lemidi bought a lot of lemon and kayimit trees. So when they arrived in the forest, you found that the Loa Ogu mounted them. All of the Loa mounted them. In the ceremony, there will be a sacrifice, and this is where you hear them mention the brown pig. Kosho Mawon means this in 1791. It means slaves. It means slaves went brown like pigs. This is how they treated the slaves. They would sing, Kosho Mawon, gave you food you don't eat. Kosho Mawon, gave you water you don't drink. It's leaves in the wood they eat, leaves in the wood they eat, it's leaves in the wood they eat. This means that when they gave slaves something to eat without taste, without salt, And this is when we come into the tradition of peppers. They will put a lot of peppers in the food so they don't throw up. And so now they consider you like a brown pig. However, in the ceremony, they are going to kill a brown pig. Cochon Mawan is slaves. That there was one voodooist, Tijan Vixima, who was the Cochon Mawan.
So the ceremony was to abolish slavery all over the world and not just Haiti?
Correct. When they congregated in the forest that night, it wasn't just a normal ceremony. This was a meeting of the strongest, the smartest minds because, like I mentioned earlier, this meeting was 4 years in the making. And so it was an idea started by Macandal, one of the greatest revolutionaries to ever live. So they understood that this couldn't just be about Haiti because they knew about the other colonies like Jamaica, Cuba, and back in Africa where they left family. So they wanted to have a ceremony where they abolished slavery everywhere there were slaves.
I have heard stories of a black pig being sacrificed, but I heard him say a brown pig. Can you please clarify that for us?
Yeah, sure. So there are many different stories of what happened that night. However, let's remember that Samba'L said that the first person to write on this event was a French man named Lemedi, who was the owner of the property. So from the very start, the truth about Bwa Kayiman was not being told. Let's just put that out there. But he did tell us that the brown pig represented slaves. And he told us a story about, how that came to be. Now, the brown pig that night was a person. It was a person they called Tijan Vixima. Now, I go into my book about this, Mysteries of Haitian Voodoo, about Bwa Kayiman and all the people that were involved in it. I go into it into significant detail. So when I put the book out there, all of the information that I've researched will be available for everybody to read. But Samba'L also mentioned Marionette Boishesh, who was there that night as well. She was a Mambo, and now she's revered as a Loa. Now, he said that Marionette Boishesh was Marguerite Dede, who they say that she lost her mind, and that when Dessalines died, she took his remains and hid it on a plate for Satan. Now, we're going to try to get more clarity and understanding on what that means in the future, because Marionette Boishesh is a very complicated law. But we'll do an episode on her in the future. We'll do an episode on Macandal and Boukman, in the future. So make sure you stay tuned. But now let's get back to the story and let's find out more about this Cochon Mawan, or brown pig, that was sacrificed on the night of Bwa Kayiman.
Tijan Vixama, c'est lui-même qui mandait moun yo lors de la cérémonie. Yo dit bon, comme nous pas gen yon bête pour nous faire sacrifice, nous pas gen cochon. Parce que si on n'a pas sa cochon dans la cour, nous demandons de diam de qui plein chien enragé, cochon t'a fait bruit, tout le monde dans la zone t'a mourir. Pas gen cochon, pas gen poule, pas gen pigeon. Eh bien c'est moun qui gagne. Tijan dit lui-même la baille tête li en holocauste, la baille tête li en sacrifice. Pour lui-même pour le mourir, pour gagner liberté en Haïti. Et puis c'est comme ça, Tijan prend un EPA, il lève 4 façades, et puis il dit il va couper gorgette li, et tout le monde qui va prendre ouet yo tremper dans sang yo, faut passer sang dans fond yo. Et le roi Gouma blanc, c'est zombie qui va goumer avec l'armée Napoléon Bonaparte. Et c'est comme ça au fait, et c'est sans ça au prend, et bien c'est sans ça qui fait Gouma nèg yo, et bien là ça, c'est même sans Tijan qui font bouteille mingan et on prend les gourmet pour le gourmet dans vêche et laisse ça qu'on y a c'est une bataille technologie et spirituelle. Par exemple, esclave t'a gourmet avec loi, avec croyance, et nous-mêmes nous gagnons l'armée Napoléon t'a gourmet avec zam technologie. Et nous-mêmes, nous te calé l'armée Napoléon avec zam technologie là, parce que nous-mêmes, nous te gon zam, qui c'est la spiritualité et la croyance ancestrale, nous calé avec croyance ancestrale. Voilà, c'est ensemble de, en gros, de cérémonie Bwa Kayiman. C'est-à-dire des cérémonies que Bwa Kayiman, chaque monde qui vient à bagay par eux, mais moi-même ça, moi-même, moi contre la cérémonie Bwa Kayiman, moi pas voulais pour un gars qui dit c'est même seulement faire cérémonie, parce que son congrès, c'est tout le monde qui est dans le congrès, mais comme protestant, ou même non pas dans la cérémonie Bwa Kayiman, parce que c'est pas tout qui était devant, c'était beaucoup de monde qui était devant. Et c'est le roi qui était relé par les Jésus. Parce que beaucoup de monde dit, bon Dieu qui est en l'air, qui éclaire terre, qui c'est soleil là, qui c'est de l'eau, qui c'est vent, qui c'est terre, qui c'est du feu. Ou est mal blanc a fait nous. Dieu blanc demandé de l'eau nager, mais Dieu pas nous demandé que content, Dieu pas nous demandé l'amour, Dieu pas nous demandé remède, bah nous pouvoir, bah nous force pour nous combattre blanc ça yo, pour nous détruire sous terre, pour nous même pour nous vivre sous terre ça, qui pas terre pas nous, terre maman nous, terre papa nous. Qui est Haïti, qui veut dire terre particulière, terre pas nous. Haïti, terre sacrée. Haïti, terre montagneuse. C'est ça que je veut dire. Et c'est pas ça, nous allons passer de Haïtiens, nous allons passer de Haïtiens qui viennent de Haïtiens Vélékété. Ce qui c'est Mambo Haïda. Là, on dit Haïtien, c'est étymologie, la définition, c'est dans Haïtiens. Haïtiens, Béléko, Haïtiens, c'est maman peuple haïtien, non. Et c'est lui-même qui symbolisait palmier ou bien palmis, c'est qu'il a au propre sacré monde dans l'initiation. Haïsan lui-même, c'est lui-même membre haïsan qui aurait les palmis là. Et c'est membre haïsan lui-même, c'est madame Valaredo, c'est des noms ça nous-mêmes nous les haïtiens ou les haïsans ou les haïtiens, haïtiennes. OK? Et c'est même haïtien ça, haïa nous va dire haï bobo, est-ce qu'on prêt? Haï bobo. Est-ce que ou là Aïe Bobo, est-ce que vous comprenez? Aïe Bobo, bonjour. Aïe Bobo, bonsoir. Aïe Bobo, comment allez-vous? Aïe Bobo, how are you? Aïe Bobo, good morning, etc. C'est ça qui est les Aïe Bobo. Au lieu pour nous même nous dire béni soit l'Éternel, gloire.
Tijan Vixamar would ask them and say, since we don't have a pig, I'm going to sacrifice myself. There was no pig. There was no chicken. There was no pigeon. Because if they had a pig and Lemedis Lakou with them, the pig would have made loud noises and everyone would have been dead. He gave his head in sacrifice so people can have liberty in Haiti. He cut his throat and everyone put their finger in the blood and put the blood on their forehead. So when they go fight with the whites, it's a zombie that's going to fight them. This is the blood that's going to make them fight. It was a spiritual and technological battle. We had a spiritual weapon. We beat the French with our spiritual weapons while they had weapons of technology. It's not right to say that it was just the Houngans that had the ceremony. It was a Congress. It was Catholics there, Protestants there. The Protestants were mad because it wasn't them that was in front. It was Boukman. And because it was the Lord that was called, not Jesus. But then Boukman gave the prayer. He asked them to give them the power. And so Haiti is a sacred land. Haiti is the land of Haïtien, the mother of the Haitian people. Mambo Haïtien, called the Palmas, is the mother of the Haitian people. Mambo Aïda. This is where we get Aïe from Aïe Bobo. Are you ready? Aïe Bobo. Are you there? Aïe Bobo. Do you understand? Aïe Bobo. Good morning. Aïe Bobo. Good night. All of this we get from Haïtien. Mambo Aïda. Haïtien is Haïtien, the mother of the Haitian people. You know, it's truly inspiring to hear about the resilience, the cultural significance, and the historical impact of this pivotal event in the Haitian Revolution. I've heard the stories about Bwa Kay Iman in the past, and I've always heard it told about a pig being sacrificed, but to learn that a man by the name of Houngan Samba'L, and I talk about him in my book in depth, but to hear that he chose to sacrifice his life so that they could, win this war against slavery, I find that to be very courageous. And I think that most of the people there that night would have done the same thing because they wanted their freedom. And they wanted the freedom for the generations to come later. So what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to continue this conversation about Bwa Kay Iman into the next episode, because I really want to get into the details of Houngan Samba'L, as well as, the Mambos who were involved, as well as the other people that were there, and to get a great understanding of the Bwa Kay Iman and how it ignited a movement for freedom. But to hear Houngan Samba'L break it down the way that he did, he really gave me a lot of insight, and I hope for you too, about this, because I never knew about Norman Lemedi. I never knew how the code word for slaves was cochon marron, which leads to why maybe a lot of people think it was an actual pig that was sacrificed and not a man that chose to sacrifice his life. And so with all of that was said today, it kind of changes the context of Bwa Kay Iman for me. Meaning, these people that met, they met with a determination that after that meeting, nothing was going to be the same. And to see that a man said, you know what, we don't have a sacrifice, a beast sacrifice, here's my life, that tells me how much they were willing to give that night. And so as Houngan Samba'L said, he said all of the Loa mounted people that night. So not just Ogu, not just Ezili Dantor, not just Dambala. All of the Loa mounted people that night. And this is what gave them the force to do what they needed to do. So as I said, when the show is good, we run out of time. But we're going to continue this Bwa Kay Iman into next week. And if you have any questions about what Samba'L said, please submit your questions to us. You can catch us online on Instagram at papa.mystique. You can catch us on TikTok at papa.mystique, and as well as on X. So make sure you hit us up. If you want to know more about Haitian Voodoo, make sure you follow us on all platforms. As we're also on YouTube, Papa Mystique on YouTube. So hit us up on all platforms with any questions that you may have about this podcast or any others. I want to make a quick book recommendation before we close this episode. I want to recommend Houngan Samba'L's book called Ati Soleil. You can find that book on Amazon. All right, it's in Creole, but get your Haitian Creole English translators out and get the information out of the book, because it's a great book. That book helped me out a lot. I love the book. I reference the book every single day. And so it's a good one to start with and look out for. And also, too, look out for my book coming out soon. Coming out as Mysteries of Haitian Voodoo, the book. So by me, myself, Papa Mystique. There's a lot of information in that book that will be available to you. So keep following. And again, if you have any questions, please ask. And then we'll take the time to answer your questions either on the podcast or on the social media platforms. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody for joining in and listening, and we will catch you within a week. Peace.